This is Becoming Her, a podcast for survivors of abuse or assault to share their stories. I'm your host, Emily Kempe, and I'll be having a conversation with a different survivor each week. I want to be sure to include a strong trigger warning with this podcast. The content we discuss includes topics related to violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, and welcome to Becoming Her. Just for the listeners so that they know, we have our next guest coming in via FaceTime. So if we sound a little bit different, that's why. But hopefully we'll be able to hear nice and loud and clear. And hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem.
So for this podcast, I won't be using your name. So instead of doing our normal introductions, we're just going to dive right in. And is that okay with you?
That sounds great to me.
Awesome. So I guess, I'm just going to ask a really general question and have you start telling your story wherever it makes the most sense for you.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So where did it begin, or where do you want to start?
So it's been 4 years and a few days since I was raped in college. It was my senior year. It was by this guy that was just a very selfish, jerky person. I'm happy to say that now, these days, he wouldn't really have much of an effect on me. But, back then I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to romance and that sort of thing. So I was very naive and trusting and always believed the best of people. And I had just broken up with my long-term boyfriend, who was like my first love kind of thing. So I was just very vulnerable, but didn't realize it. Like looking back, I'm like, oh, honey, it's okay. But at the time, you're like, no, I'm strong. I'm fine. So that made me kind of vulnerable to this guy who was just a jerk. We'd actually had what I did not know at the time was casual sex a couple times, and that was consensual. Not very memorable, but, consensual, legal. And it kind of caused me to have feelings for him, but I also recognized, like, I'm very trusting, but I am at least intelligent when it comes to recognizing toxic behaviors, even if I forgive people too easily. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of separating myself from him as much as possible. We went to the same college. College was small, like real small. Ran into people all the time,
Right. So you were going to be seeing this person kind of everywhere, no matter what.
Yeah. And so one night I was actually celebrating my birthday, went to the bar and got very drunk, very, very drunk. It was, my inhibitions were just lower just because it was my senior year. So I kind of figured it was the last time I'd be able to get like really drunk on my birthday.
Many of us have had a very similar experience in college, I'm sure.
Yeah. And just, last time I was like, okay, next year when I turn 23, I'll probably be working and can't really get drunk and might not even want to get drunk. So I'm like, okay, like this is the end of the year, like let's let loose. And also all these projects too, because senior year.
Right.
Yeah. And long story short, I ended up going to the toxic guy's room, originally just intending to talk, and it quickly turned into a very uncomfortable situation, especially for someone who is, again, very drunk.
Right.
There's parts of the night that I don't remember. The next day I woke up and really didn't feel so great. And I kind of snuck out, and there was a moment where I could either go to my dorm or go to a professor's office because I knew her hours. I just remember I'd gotten an email knowing what her hours were, and she said she was going to be in her office early, and a part of me even then just wanted me to go to her office, and don't even know what, but...
So something inside of you is like, hey, something bad has happened, like part of you wanted to look for some help. Yeah.
Yeah. And I trusted her, and I still trust her. She's, a great professor and definitely a great role model and just somebody who really cares about her students. But I didn't. It was raining. I couldn't find my shirt, so I wore his hoodie, and I just walked back as fast and as discreetly as I could because it was like 7 a.m. bunch of college students around, trying to make sure I didn't run into anybody I knew.
Right.
And just walked back to my apartment and slept for 2 hours, and then got super sick, like, because I was hungover, and ended up skipping class that day. And it was a very bad time after that, because I tried to, all the signs were there, you know, and I tried to just kind of make it so that it wasn't as bad as it was. But that was probably the most miserable 6 weeks of my life, 5 weeks of my life, because I was in denial, but I was just so scared all the time. Right. I'm not a very scared person, you know. I'm very independent, and, you know, things don't really intimidate me too much. I'm also really socially awkward, so sometimes I don't even know when it would be a good time to be, you know, scared. Hey, maybe we should be a little embarrassed. I'll just be like, hi guys, and then it like turns out these two people were like making out, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then I would just be like, oh shit, that's me. And
so the fact that you were scared at all is like, you know, a pretty big internal red flag.
It was, and I was obsessed with knowing where the guy was, and it wasn't because I wanted to see him, though. I wasn't excited. I didn't want to know. It's because I had to know if he was in the same room as me. Right. Was he going to be there? Was he going to, you know, just where was he? It was like, I know now it's a very common symptom of assault, in that you're basically like prey, and the person who assaulted you is the predator, and you know that, so you just want to know where the predator is.
Especially on such a small campus, you know, there's only so many places you can go. I'm sure it amplified that feeling a lot.
Oh, it did. And I kind of just don't want to talk anymore about that. Long story short, though, I ended up accepting what happened to me after a very horrible month of panic attacks and nightmares and flashbacks of what had happened that night, and just in general, just not being myself. And then I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was because I went out with some friends during like a senior bar crawl. Didn't get very drunk this time, but I just had a very fun day with people who were not around him. I feel like it almost kind of cleared a fog, and I just kind of accepted it of, this guy raped me, didn't he? Yeah, he did.
And it can take a while for that reality to sink in. Nobody wants to believe that that's happened to them, or, you know, think that about someone they know. So it's not always, I think that's a common misconception, that it's like this immediate realization, and I knew what happened, and, you know, I knew that it was wrong. It's like, no, you know, people really wrestle with the reality of what happened to them, and it can take a while for it to sink in.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. And I mean, I've learned a lot about it in the last 4 years, about how you react to a traumatic event. Right. And the human mind is really interesting, but it's tricky. It tries to get you to forget, because that's the easiest way to like heal. But, you know, the best way is to just confront what happened and talk about your feelings and talk about what happened and move through it instead of trying to avoid it. Right. But so those first few weeks, I was not trying to do that. I ended up telling my professor, telling my closest friends, really clinging to a core group of people who I always knew, like, that's the interesting part in hindsight, is just who I knew I could trust instinctively, and who I probably shouldn't. Luckily, all my friends were very supportive, didn't try to convince me that he's a good guy, he wouldn't do that. Like, none of them were like that, so that was good. And I told the school, so they opened up a sexual assault investigation. They ended up finding, he got to stay on campus even while I was graduating, even though he was not graduating. So that was a really shitty last 6 weeks of college. I've never been back to my college campus, and I don't think I ever will, because some things you just can't forget.
Right, and there was the trauma of the assault, but then being re-traumatized by the lack of support from the school. So it's not just, the one person in the one space, or it's like the whole campus is sort of tainted with these memories.
Yeah, no, and also, I didn't really like my college even before that. Like, most of my friends were older than me, and they'd graduated, so by my senior year, I, didn't have that many friends that I, really, felt close to. But I graduated, I went home. I was basically a pile of nothing on my parents' couch for like 2 weeks watching Netflix, like just basically like recovering from, you know, the assault, the stress of the school year, just in general, like just trying to be like, what the fuck was that?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell kind of a senior year was that? And then I kind of started to put it together a little bit. I applied for jobs and actually accepted one and moved out of state to a state several states away, which I think is what I needed. Like, I basically just felt like I couldn't breathe.
Right.
And, you know, I had panic attacks. I was still dealing with trauma. I was going to counseling, but, you know, and my friends all felt really bad for me. And that's how I knew it was bad, because that they noticed that they were like, you know, she's not herself. And they knew exactly why, because I told them. But it's like, you know, they're pretty accepting people. So if they're like looking at you like with concern in their eyes, it's like, man, it must be really obvious that something's wrong.
Well, they were like reflecting back to you some of like how you're thinking and feeling and behaving. And it's one thing to be like kind of inside your own head or feeling those feelings internally, but then when the people around you are mirroring it back to you, it's harder to ignore.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so that was actually a really interesting time as well, because I was trying to heal. And I also knew that hating him was not the right path to take, because I think hate is like a poison that you drink hoping someone else will die from it, as the saying goes, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I just knew that was a bad path. And I remember like wanting bad things to happen to him and then being like, no, he's not going to turn me into a bitter and hateful person. He's not going to do that. I'm not going to let him. I don't have control over what happened, but I have control of what happens from here and who I become. And I was interviewed one more time by the school over the phone, which was really traumatic. I talk about it on the website, so people can kind of read that if it sounds like something that they can unfortunately relate to. But when all was said and done at the end of the summer, he was found more likely than not to have sexually assaulted me. And he had to go to therapy, and he couldn't be president of his fraternity. And that was it.
So that was his only sort of punishment, or the only repercussions for his actions.
Yeah, and I just like to point out that he could not do that, and he could not be an orientation leader for freshman students. You know, statistics show that 18-year-old freshman women, are most likely to be assaulted in their first year of school.
Right.
So, I did what I could, but I mean, I know that school really well, and that's not really a punishment at all. Like, he could easily hurt someone else. So that became another part of my journey, was not blaming myself for what happened, and also not blaming myself for anything he did to someone else. Like, because I really felt bad. You know, I really wanted to do what I could to let people know that he's dangerous, stay away from him, keep an eye on your friends. But, you know, that's not my responsibility.
Right. And you were still healing, you know, I'm sure you're preoccupied with kind of dealing with your own side of things. It's not your responsibility to have to try and save everyone from him. In reality, you know, it would have been more effective for the school to have removed this person from campus so that they couldn't have hurt anybody ever again. So that's more on them than it is on anybody else.
Yeah, and that was another thing that made me really angry. I actually filed a Title IX complaint against them, but that was like 4 years ago, and the political climate's very different now, and I don't know what's going to happen with that. Probably nothing. I don't know. I've also moved a lot, so maybe I just didn't get a mail thing. But all I can say is 4 years later, it's literally been 4 years and a few days later since the attack. I never thought I would be as okay as I am now.
Wow. Like,
ever. I thought my life was over. I didn't know what to do. I doubted everything about myself. And it was definitely hard, and I definitely worked through a lot of issues with therapy, with medication, because I do have a chemical imbalance, you know, like depression and anxiety.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure trauma makes that worse.
Yes, it does. Yeah. We can all be predisposed to some of those imbalances, but then trauma usually reinforces them or brings them to the surface and makes them much, much worse.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's strange. It was really hard. It was really painful, but I feel like I'm now just something better than what I could have been before the attack, because I'm a lot wiser. I'm stronger. I love myself. And, most of my life, like most of my, been around for about 25, 26 years. And most of that I was probably spent not recognizing how strong of a person I was and how kind I was and how brave I was until I had to be brave and I had to be kind to myself and to, mainly to myself, because that's who I was kind of neglecting the most, but in general, just everybody. And, especially people who have been sexually assaulted as well, and having a new sense of sympathy because, I'm one of them. I'm one in the 4, one in the 6, whatever. It doesn't matter. Too many people it happens to.
And let me just say, too, that I've heard a lot of survivors talk about this, like, yin and yang feeling of, like, not being happy at all, obviously, that they've gone through this trauma, and not wishing it on anyone else either, but also recognizing that they wouldn't be the person that they are today, the person that they love so much without the experience. And so, it is a little bit of like, you can't always have the good without the bad. Not, again, that you would ever want somebody to go through that, but it does bring these characteristics of strength to the surface out of necessity, which is, I don't know, there is like a little bit of a beauty to that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a fan of the saying that everything happens for a reason. Sometimes things happen because people are shitty.
Right.
And that's that. That's the story.
There it is.
Not trying to, shit on anyone who does believe that.
Right.
Like, maybe I'm wrong. But my personal philosophy is not everything happens for a reason, but you can control how you react to it.
Right.
And that's kind of what matters more than anything.
Control the things that you can in a situation that you couldn't control.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the biggest lessons. Like, I look back and it doesn't seem like it was 4 years ago, but it was. Mm-hmm. And I've done so many things. I've, dated, even fallen in love once, and I've just done so many great things that prove that I didn't let it beat me.
Right.
And I didn't let hate or anger or bitterness or fear or any of those negative emotions kind of shape my future. I mean, I've experienced all those things, mm-hmm. but again, it's like you can't change what happens to you. You can only change how you react. So, feel what you got to feel, but ultimately keep your end goal that you're going to get through this, because you are, if you believe in yourself. And I did. And I'm honestly just a very happy person. And I'm I think, very strong person. And I have a lot of it has to do with how I handled that, kind of a life-defining moment, because I chose to make it that way.
And I think that's such a hopeful message, and a message that I think a lot of survivors who might be maybe not quite as far along in their healing journey might need to hear. That's a really empowering and hopeful message for people to hear, that they can get better, that you can be better than you were before even.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I also want to say, like, heal on your own journey, man. Like, it's a part of being, like, loving yourself and being gentle to yourself, is just do it at your own pace. Try not to lash out to somebody who doesn't, understand, and just, they want what's best for you and they want you to move on, but understand that they're not you. And so you have to decide, where am I at in my journey? I'm going to keep moving forward, but if I'm still angry, that's okay too. That's fine. Mm-hmm. That's natural.
That's very wise. That's really wise. And I actually would love to just talk a little bit more specifically about, like, what does that healing journey look like for you, and what are the things that you do regularly or have done to sort of help that healing journey along?
Yeah. So I went to therapy for right about a year straight for a rape counselor, and I've been on medication for about 3.5 years, something like that, on and off. I'm pretty consistent these days. Mm-hmm. And those things are important because they kind of stabilize myself. And I think I tried for so long not to seek help, before the rape for my depression and anxiety, because I kind of thought lesser of myself for it. And now I'm just like, hell no, I got to do what I got to do to survive.
Right.
It's okay if you only save one life, and it's okay if that life is your own.
Right. I think too, there's like a lot of misconceptions about things like therapy and medication, that like it's gonna magically make everything better. But I think when you're in a place of crisis and you can't achieve any kind of sense of safety, that by going to counseling and getting on medication, it's not that it's like healing you, it's creating enough space so that you can actually do the work to heal. Because if you're constantly, suffering from anxiety or panic attacks or depression, then you're preoccupied with those things and you can't get to the healing part. So you got to like get that immediate crisis stabilization taken care of first. And then there's so much more room to do all of the things that you can do for yourself to heal.
Yeah, no, I think you put that perfectly. That's it, I think. And I don't know, I kind of been like I regularly have car therapy sessions with myself. Nice. Where I drive and play music and talk to myself, because I'm such a great conversationalist. No.
You are, actually. I think you are doing a great job.
Thanks. But I don't know, something about it the other day, I guess I was just thinking about my life. I've celebrated my birthday recently, and I'm always usually kind of thoughtful around this time of year, just because it's a brand new year from the moment of birth till my next birthday. So it's like New Year's Eve, only for just me.
Oh, that's a really, really wonderful way of looking at it. I'm going to use that for my next birthday.
Yeah, no, I highly recommend it. It's cool to look back and just think about how you're different and, just what you've done. And, this last year, actually, my 25th year of existence was very rough at times, but I got through it, and I made good choices, and it was just like I took care of myself. And I would have reacted a lot more negatively if I hadn't taken care of myself after the rape, if I hadn't gotten therapy, if I hadn't learned from my therapist ways to like remember the facts and remember that it's okay to feel hurt, it's okay to react this way, but how can we make this productive? And it's been a great journey. And I try not to think about, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that, because as a professor of mine said, if you keep thinking that, you're going to eventually blame yourself. And it always did. It always turned into me blaming myself. Oh, I should have done that. I'm an idiot. I shouldn't have done that. And it's like, no, it's okay. People make dumb decisions every day. It's just the time they don't result in anything negative.
Right.
They look back and they're like, ah, shit, I should have gone to the grocery store. Or I should have gotten gas this morning. And it's,
right.
Nobody cares, though, because nothing bad happened. It was just an inconvenience. Only this time, when something bad happened, it was really traumatic. And that's why I'm beating myself up over everything, or why I used to, over every single action I made. And it's just not a good way to live. So I kind of just wish I could go back and tell myself, when people show you who they are, believe them, because there are red flags.
Right.
And it's not because I blame myself for not being more cold-hearted. It's that it would just, how do I say this? It would be that it would be better for my self-esteem if I just hadn't.
Right.
So it's not because of what they did, it's because of how I felt. And if I could just go back and help myself not feel so low, I would. But yeah, and also just, I wish I could tell her that, you're a lot stronger and smarter than you give yourself credit for. And it's okay if you just want to, if people that don't make you feel good about yourself, just stay home and read a book. There's a lot of great books, or watch TV, or hang out with people you don't know that well, but make you feel good about yourself.
Right.
Because people, when they show you who they are, believe them. And if you did that instead of assuming the best of people, it's going to save you a lot of grief to just be like, oh, okay, you know what? That's your problem, not mine.
And I'm also hearing this element of like, you have the power to make yourself feel good about yourself, that you can be in relationship with yourself to a point where like you are enough to give yourself the self-confidence boost that you need, and you don't need that from other people.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's just self-love and just acceptance. It's, it's something that everybody talks about when you're growing up.
Right.
Especially for girls. But for me, I didn't really fully embrace that until I was at the lowest point in my life, but also at the point where I was rebuilding myself.
Right.
So it was really important to remember that and be like, this is who I'm going to be from now on. And this person's going to care about herself. And I'm really just so freaking happy these days. I have great friends. I have a great relationship with my family. I'm living with some roommates. We're friends. We have fun. I have a job that I really like. I work with people I like. I'm making friends from there. And I'm just so happy in my own skin in a way that I wasn't for probably most of my life.
Yeah.
Part of that's just being a teenager and being in your early 20s and being like, am I like driving the car right? Or am I about to like drive off a cliff?
Right.
But nowadays I'm a lot more self-secure. And, part of that was because of just taking care of myself after a really bad thing happened and believing in my own future, even if I didn't know what it looked like.
Right. That you could get better, that you would get better.
Yeah. So, and to kind of circle back to like how I did that, I did the therapy and the medication. I wrote for her, and that was really great. That was like there's power in your own voice.
Right.
When you feel like people don't believe you or that people aren't going to believe you, the best thing you can do is just say the truth anyway, because chances are there's people listening who do believe you and
have gone through similar experiences. And I often call that giving people the gift of going second, because most people sort of get trapped in that self-doubt. But sometimes when you can hear somebody else share their story first, it empowers, the next person to share their story, and then the next person and the next person. And they just needed somebody to go first.
Oh, I think yeah. For me, honestly, I think I'd already kind of come to terms with it, but the summer I believe it was summer, after I was assaulted, was when the Emily Doe Brock Turner, you want to talk about a powerful letter.
Yeah.
She talks in that letter about being a lighthouse for other survivors and people who've just been abused and, just are going through a really tough time. And so I kind of really try to embrace that. And I don't know if I'm so much a lighthouse anymore because I haven't been very active with her anymore, just because I've healed.
She said as she's on a podcast.
I mean, I'm on the podcast, but
it's pretty lighthousey, I would say.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
But I don't know. I used to think that the rape was going to define my whole life.
Right.
Now I don't even think about it anymore. I'm like, no, there's a lot more to me than that.
Right.
That's just something that happened, and I grew from it. And, I definitely had a lot of rough time in 2016 and the Me Too, when Dr. Christine Blasey Ford testified in front of the Senate, the all-male Senate panel about Judge Brett Kavanaugh. That was, I couldn't watch that. I still have not watched that. And it's because I've been her.
Right.
And I kind of know, I think, how she feels. And it's okay it's not weak to just be like, I am going to sit this one out. I don't want to watch this, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that I'm not healing or that I'm not stronger. It just means that this is really hard-hitting shit, and it happened to me. And, I got to take care of myself.
Yeah, you have a right to take care of yourself.
Yeah. And so, I mean, every now and then something really rough hits, but for the most part, day to day, I'm really happy with who I've grown into and who I've become. And 4 years ago, I never would have thought that would happen.
I think that's incredibly beautiful. And I've never met you, and we're doing this over a recording, but I can feel kind of this like strength coming from you. It's very magnetic and very inspiring. And I guess I just would like to ask if there's anything that you would want to tell a survivor listening right now, wherever they're at in their journey, that might be helpful to them. What would you want them to know, or what do you think would be helpful for them to hear?
Oh boy, I'll probably think of a great answer for this later when I'm like in the shower.
Yeah, no pressure.
I think one thing I would say is that you're not alone, and talking about it, even if it's just to your diary, can be super powerful. And if you have a favorite book, if you have a favorite show, if you have a favorite song, show yourself some self-care and read the book, watch the show, listen to the song like 60,000 times. It's okay. Because if it makes you feel alive, again, it's worth it. And if you keep finding those moments where you feel alive, that's how you're going to kind of map out, I guess, a constellation of your future self. And you're going to get there. Mm-hmm. And it just is, it's not like in the movies where point A happens, then B, then C, then D, and then climax, and then that's it. That's the movie. It's not like a straight line. It's lots of hours of just being alone in your apartment, not hurting yourself, not being on social media, not doing anything that will hurt you, and just being like, you did everything you could and you're fine. And that's enough. You're enough. And then there's times where you just see a kid at the movie theater with the same haircut as him and you have a huge panic attack. But then you remember that that's not him. And if it is, that person's not going to hurt you anymore. And go find your tribe. I was lucky, I was at a movie theater when that happened, and my friends were there waiting for me. And that was kind of who I latched on to. So just latch on to whatever you need to remember who you are and whatever makes you feel good.
I really liked your language too around this idea of like leaning into the moments that make you feel alive again. And language that I like to use for those types of moments is like marinating in them. Because I think it's easy to be like, okay, I feel good. Now I need to feel good again, tomorrow and in an hour from now and a minute from now. And it's like, just kind of like, marinating and basking in those moments so that your body and your brain and your little mind and your soul can just remember how good those moments feel. And that kind of helps like retrain, all of the trauma.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just reminding yourself that you're still alive.
Yeah.
Even if you don't feel like it, or if you, even wish you weren't, you just got to remember that there are things out there that do make you happy, and there's only going to be more. Like, I'm full of quotes because I love to read. Okay, so I'm sorry.
I love a good quote. Yeah, lay it on me.
But it's like, I forget who said it, but it was, what a beautiful thought that the best day of your life hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah. That's very, very hopeful.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a million other great quotes. I mean, I have a whole Pinterest board because that was another thing that I really like doing. I found is just finding really cool quotes said by people a lot smarter than me and more eloquent, and just reminding myself of them. Because I'm like, if somebody else wrote it and it's something I'm thinking, then it can't be false, right?
Then other people will feel the same way.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a really long-winded answer, but hopefully there's something there you can use.
No, I think that's all incredibly helpful. And yeah, again, thank you so much for sharing. And you're just so full of wisdom. And I am feeling really like, inspired right now. So I'm sure that those words will resonate with any survivor as well. And I know that they'll lean into those words and find them to be helpful. And so with that, I mean, I don't have any other final questions for you. I just want to say again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I think it was really moving. And that's it on my end, unless there's anything else that you kind of want to close by saying.
No, I mean, just thank you for having me. Thank you for saying so many nice things about me.
No.
It's been nice talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Be sure to subscribe and don't forget to check out our online community at weareher.net. If you or someone you know has experienced abuse or assault, you can always call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799